Donald Trump says he's considering giving a tariff break to U.S. automakers who say their cars could become too expensive due to imported parts used in making American vehicles. Trump has also taken the first step to slap new tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductor imports. For more on this, we're joined now by Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley, who is a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Governor Pritzker of Illinois stated over the weekend that he believes Trump's broad-ranged tariff policy here will bring the U.S. to a recession, views that other major banks and economists share. But in terms of the tariffs on China specifically, Illinois does more trade with China and exports more to China as it relates to farming specifically than most other states in the country. And I know it imports, I think it's second most imported state from China in the country. Just talk about the concerns and what you're hearing from some local businessmen about the impact these tariffs could have, because we know the 10% tariff, the flat 10% on everyone but China has lowered concerns from other countries, at least for the 90-day pause. The China tariffs for now still are in place.
Yeah, and look, some of this is the uncertainty. You talked just before about the fact that this is changing by the hour, by the day with the whims of the president, right? If you don't like our tariff policy, wait a few minutes, it'll change. That uncertainty is damaging enough. So yeah, I hear from the farms, I hear from the manufacturers, I hear from the hospitality industry, because people are canceling flights to the United States, particularly from Canada. So it's a strange set of bedfellows now. Right, I'm the liberal Democrat from Chicago, and I'm on the same page with the Wall Street Journal now. Called it the dumbest trade war in history, a $6 trillion tax increase. The Cato Institute, Goldman Sachs, who knew that only this president could throw the group of us into each other's arms in agreement? A very real concern about a recession. At the same time, spiking costs, slowing the economy, creating unemployment, real concerns. And I just have to add, beyond my own state's borders, the other thing I tell my constituents is this tariff policy, along with other aspects of what they're doing, is going to make us less safe. The old adage in foreign policy is, to have a friend, you need to be one. I'm not sure we're anybody's friend now. When we tell NATO they're on their own, we cut out all our soft power with USAID, treat Ukraine this way, and then put tariffs on everyone. I'm concerned that we're not going to have any friends when we need them.
Well, one friend, and hopefully we can get into this a little bit later on in the show with you, is El Salvador. Clearly, with that press conference yesterday in the Oval Office, there is a very close relationship between the U.S. and El Salvador. But just going back to what you said about strange bedfellows, one person that actually you probably are in agreement with as well is former Vice President Mike Pence, who recently came out and said that Congress should reclaim its constitutional authority over tariffs. Just give us your take on the legality of these tariffs, because obviously for a lot of them, whether it's semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, steel and aluminum, Donald Trump is sort of, looking at Section 232, looking at whether or not some of these tariffs or importing some of these goods pose a threat to national security. Give us your thoughts on that.
Look, the very conservative New Civil Liberties Alliance is suing the Trump administration because these tariffs are unconstitutional. This is an Article 1 power that the president has taken over. What's concerning to me on this and on the appropriation bills is my Republican colleagues are letting him do this. They're abdicating their responsibility, creating a horrible precedent. At some point, they're going to have to step up. I'm hoping that those lists of strange bedfellows you talk about will come forward to these Republicans and say, you've got to step up. We saw the Senate pass something that had the effect of putting elimination of this on the Canadian trade issues. But Speaker Johnson in the House halted this with the Republicans' help. They have to, at some point in time, realize that their concerns about what Trump will do to them politically isn't as important or scary as what their constituents might do to them if they don't step up and help.
You mentioned the threat of these tariffs to national security as well. China is already retaliating by withholding the export of rare earth minerals and magnets that are used in almost every component in the defense industry. And also today, just announcing that it has stopped importing Boeing planes. Boeing is the largest exporter here in the United States. They, I think in the last year or so alone, sold about 11 of their planes out of the 145 of their largest planes to China. Boeing, I know, used to be headquartered in your home state. Now they've moved a bit west. Nonetheless, a huge impact to the U.S. economy. But from a national security perspective, some of what China's doing is raising a lot of concerns.
Look, we have a lot of issues, legitimate concerns about China as an existential threat. But we have to face the economic reality that for now, our economies are extremely intertwined. And if you were going to go about doing this in a logical, coherent way, it would take a long time in coordination with other allies. But doing this by instinct, as I think the president has called it, he creates a great risk to our economy and our national security. It's just that there's no thought at all as to what the implications are going to be. This would take a lot of very smart people a long time to figure out how to do in a coherent policy. We're not doing it. We risk a recession. We risk great economic harm to ourselves. And as I've said, a great insecurity to ourselves, just because we don't have the resources we need for our defense industry, but we're also angering everybody else. We remind everyone that Article 5 in NATO has only been used once, and it was after 9/11 when our allies came to our aid. We're now telling those same people, we don't need you, we don't care about you. We're only 4.2% of the world's population. The president has to understand we need each other, and the world will spin just fine without us, given time.
I do want to touch on quickly before we leave you on that press conference we saw with President Bukele yesterday and President Trump. And there was a really sort of disconcerting moment where these two leaders essentially rendered themselves powerless to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the father who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador, to one of the most dangerous and notorious prisons in El Salvador. Let's just play that sound, and then I'll ask you a question on the back of it.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So everyone is essentially powerless to bring this man back home. Your reaction to that? And then also, I'd love to get your reaction to this idea, what that President Trump was floating yesterday, this idea of potentially deporting naturalized American citizens to the same prison in El Salvador as well.
You know, I have to put this in a larger perspective. Let's remember there was a Supreme Court decision, 9-0, right? Talking about the return of this prisoner. I think what we're witnessing here is a much bigger picture. The president has thrown off any restrictions on being an autocrat. The news stories of the day. First of all, he doesn't have to pay attention to the Supreme Court. We have a constitutional crisis. He's challenging academic freedoms, as we see with the Harvard, Northwestern, and other cases, challenging free speech, the rule of law. Folks, this is a president that warned you this is what he was going to do. When an autocrat tells you he's going to act like an autocrat, you ought to believe him. I look at this and I see the precursor here. The polling in Hungary before Viktor Orban took over and became an autocrat, very similar to what we see among registered Republicans, that democracy isn't always the best form of government. You were witnessing this in the El Salvador case and the issues with Harvard and all the other restrictions and limitations on naturalized citizens now. These are citizens of the United States now. So to bully them, to challenge them, these are the acts of a tyrant, an autocrat. And someone has to step up. The American people, my Republican colleagues, have to join us in pushing back. Because when the president understands no one's pushing back, he'll only get much, much worse.
Congressman Mike Quigley, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
the time.